tal? ¿Cómo están? Desde la Feria Internacional del Libro de Guadalajara me da mucho gusto saludarlos otra vez y me da mucho gusto tener aquí a Bernardine Evaristo, que viene, primera vez en México, ya me lo dijo, y viene a presentar este libro, ganadora del premio Booker en el 2019. How are you doing? Welcome.
Yeah, I'm great, thank you.
Yeah? Okay. You kind of explained in the first pages, but I want you to tell me a little bit more of why you decided this was the time to tell your story in the way you tell it.
Yes. So I won the Booker Prize in 2019 and my career completely changed. And a lot of people were very interested in me and I gave lots of interviews, hundreds of interviews, still today, right? It's like...
That happens when you win that award.
I know.
Not any award.
I know. It's been amazing. So the ripple
You don't have time to write anymore because it's all travel and...
It's all touring
exactly.
and so on.
Okay.
And a lot of people were interested in me. And so I was thinking about the next book that I was going to write for my publisher. And I didn't want to write another novel so quickly because I didn't want people to compare the two, actually. So I kind of dodged...
Really?
Yeah, because if you have two novels, one after the other...
God, that's the impact of those awards, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I just thought, well, I've been talking about myself a lot. I've got lots to talk about. I'm very, I've had an interesting life, a long life. So I thought, why don't I write my story in my own words? But from the perspective of my creativity, like how my creativity has been shaped by my life and vice versa. So that's why I wrote it.
How hard was it?
It wasn't hard at all.
Really?
It's so much easier than writing a novel.
Because a lot of people have a problem and say, okay, I'm going to go back, I'm going to tell that, and how do I put it, et cetera, et cetera.
I would say it's probably one of the easiest books I've written because I'm relying on my memory. I'm telling my story in my own words. I'm not having to create an imaginary world, hopefully. It should be truthful, right, if it's a memoir.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have to create characters. I don't have to think about narrative. All the things you think about with a novel, I don't have to think about. All I had to think about was how am I going to structure this book? How am I going to tell my story? And like I said, I've been talking about myself for a very long time, even before the Booker, and writing little bits about myself. So I'm kind of very used to self-interrogation, but this was like a massive act of self-interrogation.
You are a writer, an artist, so you think, and you said the word right now, about a structure.
Yeah.
So I guess, because it's not a novel and et cetera, I guess you also have to think about a structure. How do I structure this?
Yeah.
Which is, how is my life structured in a way or not?
Sort of. I mean, the book isn't chronological, but I thought I'd do something interesting with it. So it does begin with my origins, my childhood, growing up in London in the 1960s and 70s, black father, white mother, all the issues around that.
All the complications,
All the
as you described them here.
Yes, yes. And then I also thought, wouldn't it be interesting to go even further into my ancestry and try and imagine what I've learned or picked up from my ancestors that people I didn't even know, right? Because I think we do inherit things from, it just passes down through the generations, one parent to child. So that was one aspect of it. And then I thought, what about the homes I've lived in? Because an important part of my life is that I've been living in lots of homes all my life. And that has...
And the people you lived with, no?
The people I lived with, yes.
No? And your sister and...
Yeah, so
the room, you call it what?
The mental dominatrix.
I had them with a mini dictatorship.
Yeah.
I was the dictator of that room for a while.
Yeah. So I made a decision to have a creative life, first in theatre and then as a writer. And that meant, in my case, that I wasn't earning much money. I couldn't afford to buy anywhere. In the UK, at that time, people were able to buy homes. A bit harder now.
Not anymore.
Yeah. So I made a decision. So I had quite a peripatetic lifestyle as a result of that decision, not getting a well-paid job. And then I had relationships, and that also impacts on your creativity and your lifestyle and your decisions that you make. And so I thought that would be something interesting to explore, because usually when a writer writes a memoir, they often don't look at those aspects of their lives, and they talk about the influences. It's usually literary. But I thought, well, we're human beings in the world, and there are so many more things that influence us beyond other books that we read, for example. So that was kind of like some of the thinking about the book, about having these different categories.
And my guess is that you learn things about yourself when you
restructure
your life. No, that you.
I think so.
That you can. now that I put these two and two things together, that when I was a kid or the places, etc., I understand myself. Am I right?
I think so.
That maybe that happened in the process of putting it here and writing.
That's right. I mean, I think I'm very single-minded. Some would say stubborn, right? And I think that's a good quality to have if you want to pursue a life in the arts. And so when I was writing the book, I was thinking, well, I really got that from my family, from my parents, because they were stubborn. You know, my father was a Nigerian man, arrived in Britain 1949 and just fought against the system. You know, he was a political activist, left-wing political activist. My mother came from this white family who hated the fact that she was marrying a black man. But she loved him, so she wasn't going to listen to them. So I grew up with people who were going to do what they wanted to do, irrespective of what people around them were asking them to do.
Yeah, and I guess your learning was that because what they did at that time, no? I mean, the picture you have here, by the way, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
That was not an easy thing to do.
No, but they...
No, a white woman, and a black man from Nigeria.
Yeah.
Not only their parents, not only your grandparents, society
as well
would look at them.
It was a social taboo for my mum. But, you know, I admire her so much. She used to say, I didn't see his colour, which is a very strange thing to say, but she said it and meant it. What she was saying is she saw him as a person and the colour was not important for her. And that's a really admirable thing, you know. So I did grow up with parents who had a lot of integrity and were political activists. And when I was writing the book, I was thinking, yeah, that's where it came from. Me as a writer, writing about the African diaspora, being very independent, very single-minded, trying to sort of in some way be a force for good in the world. That all came from my early origins of my family.
Because when I was reading, also, because that's your history, it's also on how society has changed in a way. And how being a black feminist 20 years ago is not the same.
40.
Or 40 years ago is not the same. That today. No, and there's a part of the book where we say, now that I think about my feminism 20 or 25 years ago, it was that and that. So it's also a picture of that different society where you grew up, where you live now, isn't it?
It's a kind of social history in a way.
That's what I mean.
Because being a feminist, and a black feminist as we used to call ourselves in the early 80s, was also a kind of social taboo. You were an outsider, you were frowned upon. You know, the media took the piss out of you, essentially. 40 years later, it's something that people wear as a badge of pride, that they're feminists and they believe in social change for women and so on. And a lot has happened in those 40 years. And that's one of the things I wanted to write in the book about, how this has changed, because for younger people who are angry with society as it is today, they need to be told that it may not be perfect, but it's better than it was, you know? And that as a society we progress, hopefully.
That 35 years ago, things were worse for that, no?
Absolutely.
For the history of your mother, but your own history.
But also
which is, hey, now it's not a scandal if a black woman marries a white man, and but kids learn. 60 years ago, there was not like that.
That's right. And, you know, in Britain, our political leadership is formed of a lot of people of colour. And that's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, they're right-wing, and I'm not right-wing, so I don't really like them. But we have to acknowledge that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. Even 10 years ago, that would have been unthinkable. You know, the Prime Minister of Britain is a man of Asian origin. So is the Prime Minister of Ireland. So is the leader of the Social Democrat Party the Scottish National Party in Scotland. They're all people of colour, plus other people in leadership positions. We have to acknowledge that this is progress.
Because that was something unimaginable 40 years ago.
Yes.
And I think that's part of what makes this book what it does, which is, hey, this is the way things work. This is the things. There's a lot to be done.
Yes.
Because you also say that.
Because I'm like 64 years of age, right? And I always tell people that because you're supposed to be ashamed of your age as you get older. You're supposed to go, you're supposed to hide it. But I'm 64 years of age, so I'm a wise older lady, right? I've lived a long life. And the reason I write the books that I do is because I've lived a long life. And so when I wrote something like Go Woman Other, the youngest character is 19, the oldest is 93. I could imagine, I know what it's like to be young, and I can imagine what it's like to be in your 70s, 80s, and 90s. You know, it's still a way ahead, but I can imagine it. But it gave me that scope into kind of the complexity of what it means to be human. And that is one of the things about as you get older, right? Hopefully you get wiser, hopefully.
I think.
Not everybody gets wiser.
And I think you've done something for all the people that have read your books and novels. We said, hey, this is me.
Yes.
This is what happened to me. This is how I managed to survive and be here.
Yeah,
no?
yeah.
And hey, there's a way. No, I think.
Yeah, this it's like hopefully the book will inspire people who are in the arts, especially because that's where my interest
lies. This is all
lies.
about
creativity. People in the arts who want some sort of guidance, really. Like, if it's okay to be ambitious. You know, often we're taught not to be ambitious. You're not supposed to, and if you are ambitious, you keep it very quiet and you play it small, right? So it's okay to be ambitious, but you have to have patience. You know, the most important thing is to stay true to your creativity. For me, it was my writing, to have the sort of writing integrity. So I was writing the books I wanted to write, but I had a very big vision. I wanted to win the Booker Prize, right? And when I won it, I wanted to win it in 1997. And when I won it in 2019, I said, you know something? I used to visualize winning the Booker Prize. And people were like, what?
Yeah, it took a little bit longer than I imagined.
It took a while. But yeah.
To finish, I have to ask you. Now you're going to go to a novel.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I'm working on a theatre adaptation, but next is a novel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. That's good, because that's what we
That's what
also,
people want, yeah.
we were wanting. Thank you.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thanks very much.
Gracias a todos ustedes desde la feria. Bernardine Evaristo, Manifiesto sobre cómo no rendirse. Gracias.